So we're going to look at how to determine conversion factors from given information. So if you look at the table in your notes, it doesn't appear on this screen, but it's in your notes. We see in 1960, but it doesn't appear on this screen. CO2 level in 1960 was 1960 the rate is 319. So I'm going to find the difference between those. And I'm going to divide it by the difference between 2010 it was 392. And so to find the change rate, I'm going to take here between 392 minus 319 is going to be 73 parts per million. And my difference in years is 50 years. So this is my conversion factor that I'm going to use. And I use this to make predictions about the future. So in the future, it says 2050 based on the 2010 level. So the difference between 2050 and 2010 is 40 years. So I'm going to use, I could do a for every statement, or I could do a ratio. I use my conversion factor from above, and I use 40 years. Why 40 years? Again, 2050 minus 2010 gives me my 40 years. Then I'm going to solve this again. I can do my for every statement or a fraction. When I cross multiply, I get 58.4 parts per million. That's how much I expect the CO2 levels to go up between 2010 and 2050. However, I have to add the baseline number of what the levels were in 2010, which is 392. So when I add that to it, I'm going to get 450.4 parts per million. So that would be my answer for A. I'm going to do the same process for B, but my only difference is 2100 minus 2010 is 90 years. So I'll do this one as a for every statement. So 73 parts per million for every 50 years. So now I want to know for 90 years, how many parts per million? So when I do that, I'm going to discover that I'm going to get 131.4 parts per million. I have to add it to the levels in 2010, which is 392. And so I'm going to get 523.4 parts per million. So this is what I would expect here. I'll write it up here, 523.4 parts per million based in 2100. So next I'm going to try doing this again. I need a new conversion factor. So for 2000 to 1970, I'm going to read my table, and I'm going to have 372 minus 1970's rate is 328. That gives me 44 parts per million over a span of 30 years. Why 30 years? Year 2000 minus 1970. This is the conversion factor I'm going to use below. So I'll now say 44 parts per million, which I have an extra P in there, for every 30 years. And now from 2050 to 2000, my time frame is 50 years. So to go from 30 to 50, I have to figure out from 30 to 50, I multiply by 1.67. So I take 44 and I multiply by 1.67 and I get 73. Oops, my pen's not working. Give me a second. All right, there we go. All right, and it gives me 73.3 parts per million. I add that to baseline 2000, which is 372 plus 73.3. And I'm going to get 445 or 445.3 parts per million. That's what I predict the level will be in 2050. Going to use the same conversion factor here. This time I'll use it as a ratio, 44 parts per million for 30 years. And now for 100 years. Why 100 years? Because 2100 minus 2000 is 100 years. I'm going to get 146.7 parts per million plus 372. I'm going to end up with 518.7 parts per million. And so that's how I am extracting a conversion factor from this table, and then I'm using that to make predictions about the future.